Hello Musicianship 5, Caitlin and Grumpybach here today for another class. So what I'm going to do today, we're going to branch out a little bit from music. I mean, it's still about music, but you know, we're going to kind of expand our knowledge a little bit here. And what we're going to do is actually going to talk about pastorale. So this is music which is kind of inspired by nature, and then what we're going to look at is the relationship between music and nature and how this has changed over the last few centuries. Kind of where we are now, where things have been before and stuff like that. Now this bleeds an awful lot into literature, so we're going to be looking at some poetry as well today. Hopefully give you a nice rounded view of the topic. I also gave Grumpybach a flower crown, keeping with the theme. A couple of reasons I wanted to talk about this. So this was on my kind of my mental list of topics that I could talk about anyway, because I'm not fussed with kind of, you know, pastorale music. I find it a bit dull. There's something there which I'm not kind of committed to it as some people, and that usually means when we don't understand something properly that we need to look into it a bit more and kind of gain the understanding, because it's not enough to just say, okay, I don't like this, and then you just kind of shove it off. You need to kind of say, okay, I don't like this, why? Do I not understand it? Is it a case of I don't like the way this is expressed, I don't like how, you know, whatever, and you're fine to have an opinion, but when forming opinions, we can't just say, me no likey, and then that be the end. We need to kind of explore and delve deep. This is also kind of triggered because I listened to a podcast this week, which I don't normally do, but I kind of found a big load of free ones with the uni, and I was like, oh, podcasts. And there was one which was actually about art and nature, which was cool. I was listening to that and that was really good. And they had a few different speakers up, but the final one, a literature specialist here called Fiona Stafford, was actually talking about the relationship between Wordsworth, the poet, and the Lake District. And actually some of the ideas that she was talking about here, I had no idea actually existed and that people thought this way. So some of these are in the mid-18th century. Mountains and the kind of rural area were actually seen as ugly and a place that you wouldn't want to go, because these were seen as ruins of the earth. So I don't know, I guess people just wanted to, you know, have the power spread everywhere, and the kind of ruins of the earth weren't seen as beautiful. This is very strange to us because today we're almost conditioned to believe from birth that natural scenery is beautiful, and it's like, oh yes, oh yeah, mountains, yes, beautiful, fields, beautiful, you know, lakes, beautiful all the time, and that the kind of industrial urban landscape is actually not. So I'm going to kind of explore how we got from this idea of the ruins of the earth not beautiful to now we love nature, and kind of the music that happened in between. I'm also going to be using a pad of paper which I've made pages and pages of notes on, like literally that much, because it's taken me a long time to make these, and I think I'm putting too much pressure on myself to, like, you know, memorize all of this stuff, and it takes me loads and loads of goes, and you know, the degree's heating up. I don't really have time, so I'm just going to be using my notes as well, so sorry. Just a couple of points about Wordsworth before we kind of delve into the more musical things, and also some Lincolnshire poet as well, kind of watch this space. So in 1799 Wordsworth moved back into his cottage in Grasmore, this is in the Lake District, with his sister, after being born in the Lake District to relatively wealthy background, travelling, studying. He studied in Cambridge, and then he was travelling around Europe during the French Revolution, and then came back to the Lake District. This was not a very normal thing to do, particularly for poets and artists who needed funding. They needed, basically for the very rich people to kind of go, oh yes, I like your work, I will, you know, commission more works of you. And this was the same for musicians as it was for poets and artists. So because of this, a lot of artists actually lived in London or Edinburgh, and Wordsworth did completely the opposite and moved back into the middle of nowhere in the countryside. And what he did was, in his poetry, he was very good at kind of describing the very beautiful landscape that he'd come from, but also looking at people within the landscape and the relationship between people and landscapes, which is also another kind of point that runs through all of this, is the relationship between people and the landscape, as opposed to just purely field. Artists would go into the countryside to kind of paint scenes and things like that, but the patrons would still be in cities. So what they would do is, Turner's a very good example of this, is he would go out into the countryside, say the Lake District, and he would kind of stay there for a couple of weeks, but it would be kind of a whistle-stop tour, and he would kind of see the recommended viewing spots, he would kind of do his sketches and kind of start the paintings and stuff whilst he was there, but then actually he'd go back into the cities and because he lived in a couple of different ones, and he would complete his paintings there. And this was the same with everyone really. It wasn't the case that they lived and dwelled in the countryside permanently. It was more of kind of a, I'll go on holiday, oh yeah, okay, blah, paint, and then go back. So I found this phenomenon kind of interesting, which is why we're going to talk about it. So we're going to start with, remember this kind of Wordsworth stuff, keep this in mind, and we'll kind of pick up on these bits as we go on. We're going to start with the history of the pastorale. So pastorale literally means dialogue of shepherds. So this is the people of the countryside. So people, agricultural workers, shepherds, I guess mills as well, people working in the mills. So this is kind of harking back to the poorer end of the class scale, the people who would be working and living simple lives in the countryside. The pastoral poem, where we are going to start, this is literature, this kind of embodied and set to music. This is an Italian genre of song that was used in the Renaissance. So this is the madrigal era, and this is kind of used in madrigals and then moving along into early opera libretto, so the words that you would say in opera. What the pastoral poem used to do was not so much portray nature, it had to involve nature, but it was actually portraying idyllic love. The poet was supposed to be conveying an atmosphere of this remote world of nature that still remained kind of, it's still quite civilized, even though it was about simple people and simple living, the word. It's still kind of civilized enough that it's not a load of kind of cavemen running about and things like that. But there would always be this kind of underlying mood of yearning for this unattainable earthly paradise. So in order to kind of get this across, we're going to look at an example from Monteverdi's second book of madrigals. The madrigal is called, excuse my Italian, Non si lavava ancora. So we're going to have a listen to this, and I'm going to put in the text, what it means in English as well, and listen to how this is coming across in the music. But what's happening is these main characters, this couple, kind of appear in the text as the poem goes on from the natural description. So you've got this kind of natural scene, and then gradually the characters appear. And what the piece is kind of saying is that, they've got this setting, and it's nighttime, it's very sleepy, and this couple are kind of together, and as dawn breaks, as morning comes, what happens when the morning comes is the couple have to separate and go their separate ways, and the poet uses death as a kind of metaphor here, kind of to symbolise their parting in a slightly more dramatic sense. But in a way it's kind of describing, again, this unattainable earthly paradise. So even though this setting is very beautiful and nature is very beautiful, we still have to part, which means this isn't paradise because I'm not with you. So at the end of the day, even though this is about nature, it's more about love, and it's kind of focusing on the love, but in this kind of natural setting.